Vidal versus Elster, a Supreme Court decision today, is a big deal involving trademarks and the Lanham Act. And you're like, why do I care? This is the Second Amendment channel, Mark. That's because, guess what? That decision involved an argument in the November term, the same term as Rahimi. So what does this mean for who's going to write the Rahimi decision? We got to get super geeky here, and there's some good news and maybe some very bad news. We're going to talk about it when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar, and author of the brand new best-selling book, Israel Disarmed: What the 10/7 Attacks on Israel Teach Americans About the Right to Bear Arms. Israel failed to adopt a robust privately armed citizenry, thought they could rely upon government. Unfortunately, 1,200 people were murdered by Hamas on October 7, 2023. Hundreds of people taken hostage. And of course, I talk about those kibbutzim that had arms and how they were able to fight off the Hamas terrorists on their own. We talk all about those stories, and I put this into historical context, the good and the bad and the ugly, because to be the smartest person in the room, you need to understand all this history, because it teaches us here in America why we never want to lose, among other rights, the right to keep and bear arms and private citizens that are armed to the teeth. That is a major way to thwart tyranny, and I lay out the case in my book, Israel Disarmed. All right, folks, so I've been pretty good at predicting what happens with the Supreme Court in these cases, but I got to tell you, I'm feeling a little bit of stress on this one. Specifically, who is going to write the decision in Rahimi? As you know, the Rahimi decision involves the constitutionality of a federal gun control law, 18 U.S.C. 922G8, which deals with those people subject to domestic violence restraining orders and their immediate loss of firearms while that restraining order is pending. Now, today, the U.S. Supreme Court just issued a decision in a case called Vidal versus Elster. And in that case of Vidal, that is a decision that was written by, drum roll please, Justice Clarence Thomas. Justice Clarence Thomas. The reason why that's important, even though that particular case, the Vidal case, involves interpretations of the First Amendment and Lanham Act statutory law under trademark and so on. We don't need to get into the details there. The reason why that's important is because the Vidal case was the last remaining case that was argued in the November session of the 2023-2024 Supreme Court term. And as you know, Chief Justice John Roberts, to keep the workload kind of even and well distributed, he likes, because he's responsible for assigning all opinions, who's going to draft the opinions when he's in the majority at least, and he's usually in the majority, he assigns these out. He likes to basically assign one opinion per session to each of the justices, which means what? Right now, we have decisions in that November 2023 session for every case that was argued except for the Rahimi case. Now we can see who are the remaining justices that have not yet written an opinion on behalf of the court for that November session. And there's four possible options. Chief Justice John Roberts has not written an opinion for that November session. Justice Samuel Alito has not written an opinion for that November session. Justice Kagan and Justice Sonia Sotomayor have not written opinions for that November session, which means the four justices that are still in the running to write the Rahimi case, the Rahimi opinion, are Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Sam Alito, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and Justice Elena Kagan. So what does that mean? Well, we know it would be extremely bad if either Justice Kagan or Justice Sotomayor wrote the Rahimi, because they both hate the Second Amendment and will do anything they can to undercut it, including possibly, and as I've explained in prior videos about Rahimi, I could even see them voting in the majority, quote unquote, in support of the Second Amendment in a way if they could gut the teeth of the Second Amendment, because as I've talked about on this show before, you don't have any rights if you don't have a remedy. The Soviet Union's Constitution, for example, was a glorious document, a wonderful document of preserving rights and all sorts of things. But the reality was there was no way to have a wrong remedied in the Soviet court system. So for all intents and purposes, even though it was a glorious constitution, there was no way to enforce it if you were an ordinary Soviet citizen. So my concern with Justice Kagan or Justice Sotomayor writing the Rahimi opinion is that they would try to pay lip service to the Second Amendment, but they would write it in such a way that the caveats, the exceptions, the weasel words would allow gun controllers to be able to do anything they want. And that is my concern. The good news is, and this is, I know I go on the line with predictions, I'm pretty good at this, I do not think that either the liberal Justice Kagan or liberal Justice Sotomayor will be assigned the Rahimi case. I just don't think that's going to happen, which means what? Well, I don't want to give you indigestion here, but it means it's going to come down, in a sense, to a coin flip between Chief Justice John Roberts writing the Rahimi decision and Justice Samuel Alito writing the Rahimi decision. Now, obviously, if you support the Second Amendment the way I do and the way most of you on this who watch this channel do, we all should be cheering and getting down on our knees and praying for Justice Sam Alito to write the Rahimi decision, because I think it will be a much stronger opinion and more favorable to the Second Amendment rights than if Chief Justice John Roberts writes it. So the question is, we obviously know that Alito is better on the Second Amendment than Roberts. So the question is, who's going to write that opinion, and what does Mark Smith think? Well, I'm going to give you some good news here. Here is my best guess. I think there's probably a 75 to 80% chance that Justice Alito writes the Rahimi decision. And I think the reason why that's going to happen is that Justice Alito is, I think, the second most senior justice after Chief Justice John Roberts in terms of priority and order and pecking order, if you will. Chief Justice John Roberts is number one because he's the Chief Justice. Then the next person with the next most seniority is Justice Clarence Thomas, but he just wrote the Vidal case, so he's out of the running. And the next most senior justice on that list is Justice Samuel Alito. And therefore, I think in my prediction, if you force me to guess and force me to predict, is that Justice Samuel Alito will write the Rahimi decision, and I think this is very good. I also think the reason why Chief Justice Roberts will sign the Rahimi decision to Justice Alito is because it's pretty clear that Justice Alito really likes the Second Amendment. He supports the Second Amendment. He's interested in the Second Amendment, and I don't think Chief Justice John Roberts particularly cares about the Second Amendment. I think he respects it. I think he supports it. But I don't think he's interested in it. I support and I'm pro First Amendment, for example, but do I want to spend all my time learning about the First Amendment and First Amendment cases and applying the Tinker standards and stuff? Nah, it's not something I'm passionate about like I am for the Second Amendment. So the reason why that's important is because I think that Chief Justice Roberts is going to assign the Rahimi case, or has assigned the Rahimi case, to write the opinion to Justice Samuel Alito. Remember, Justice Alito wrote the opinion in McDonald versus Chicago in 2010 that said that the Second Amendment was such a fundamental right that it applied against states and local governments pursuant to the substantive due process clause. I know that's an oxymoron, but you get the point. That's how the law works right now. And therefore, I think that right now, I think it's going to be Justice Sam Alito is going to write the Rahimi decision, and I think that will be very, very good news for the Second Amendment. Again, my prediction is that the Supreme Court is going to say that federal gun control statute, 18 U.S.C. 922 G8, is facially constitutional, which means there may be some situations where it is lawfully, constitutionally, legally applied to a particular person who has been adjudicated to be a violent, dangerous thug after prominent due process and so on, and can be disarmed under that statute. I think that's what they're going to say. So but that is not where we need to be focused on. What we really want to happen, of course, is that the standards before someone can be disarmed under 922 G8 or any aspect of 922, that very strict and robust due process protections. And again, what we really want to see in Rahimi, what I'm really cheering for, is a clear decision that says that if you've been adjudicated a violent danger to yourself or a violent danger to someone else after due process and adjudication and a finding where you've had an opportunity to be heard, and if you couldn't afford it, you got lawyers and experts and so on, then that will be the best possible outcome, because there's simply no way that this Supreme Court is going to sign off on the notion that people that are violent terrorists, violent thugs are going to be allowed, that they cannot be disarmed under the Second Amendment. They're simply not going to allow people like the 9/11 hijackers, if you will, or other people like that to be armed or be able to have guns once they're found to have been a terrorist or a violent thug or things like that. That is where the Supreme Court is not going to go. They're not going to say people that are violently dangerous to themselves or to others can have guns, or they're going to say that if the statute or a legislator wants to take guns away from those people, that is acceptable provided there's ample due process and very clear standards. Because again, I think someone that is mentally ill and hallucinating and doing crazy things with machetes in Central Park in New York City, those are the kinds of people the Supreme Court is going to allow to be disarmed consistent with the Second Amendment. I think that's actually perfectly fine as a matter of in the real world, because there are violent, dangerous thugs out there, which is why we support the right to keep and bear arms, to protect ourselves against those kinds of people. They are out there, and yes, they should go in. If you're too dangerous to be on the streets with a gun, you should be either in a prison or you should be locked up in a mental health institution of some sort. That's all true. But in the real world, again, I think we have to hope the Supreme Court says violently dangerous means you can be disarmed, but anything other than violently dangerous, you cannot be disarmed. That is the holding that we're cheering for in Rahimi, and hopefully we get that. We'll find out in the next few weeks. And right now, fingers crossed, it looks to me, by my best guess, that Justice Sam Alito will write the Rahimi opinion. I think if it's not him, it's going to be Chief Justice John Roberts. And I don't think that will be great for the Second Amendment. It won't be catastrophic for the Second Amendment, but it won't be great if Chief Justice John Roberts writes that opinion. But I just don't think he cares enough about learning about the Second Amendment in the way that Justice Alito does. And that's why I'm predicting it's Justice Sam Alito. And let's hope I'm correct, because that will be very good for the Second Amendment under these circumstances. So there you have it, folks. Hope you'll learn something here today at the Four Boxes Iron. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends. Encourage people to subscribe. We're trying to get to 150,000 subscribers. Don't forget to follow me on X for more Second Amendment information at Four Boxes Diner. And we'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.